Make that big boss less special. It ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level. Second level gaming. Second level.
Hello Internet and welcome back to our coverage of Pixelpop 2018, and I'm lucky enough to be stood here with the Pride Interactive team and Burn Ban. We have Harrison and Morgan here joining me. Now Burn Ban is currently an Android game. Correct.
Yeah.
And it is about, as far as I understand it, and I'm going to have to I'm going to do my best here. It's about a queer girl that goes to a summer camp with mental disorders. I guess they're sending her there for because of the mental disorders, or is it just a...
It's because she's done something bad at her school, and this is like a reprimand.
Gotcha.
It's sort of like in Holes when Stanley can go to Camp Green Lake or Juvenile Detention Center.
Gotcha.
And so they're like, you can be suspended/expelled or go to the summer camp for rehabilitation.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like, it's the better of the two scenarios that could possibly play out in
Right.
in this.
And just to be clear, the reason why the characters are going to the summer camp isn't necessarily because they have mental health problems. It's because that they've done something in the past, and the camp is basically, it's a therapeutic camp.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So they're not going there because of them, but most people there did something that other people might consider to be due to that, potentially.
Yeah, potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
But, yeah, it kind of deals with, mental illness is like a core theme, I would say.
Okay. First of all, I got to ask, there's a lot of kind of very societal themes going on there right off the bat. Yeah. You have a gay character, you have mental illness, all things that are to some extent can be taboo, especially in the video game world. What made you kind of go down that path? Is it a personal thing for you, or what was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, it's definitely personal.
Sure.
We've run into a lot of issues as students.
Okay.
With pushback from teachers and sometimes even our peers who don't understand, they're trying to be supportive, but they don't understand what it's like to be queer or what making a queer game means or mental illness, and we're trying to normalize it.
Gotcha.
So we want, because it's not, these are issues. There are queer people out there in the world, there are people with mental illness out there in the world, and there aren't a lot of great examples depicting those. One of the reasons that I wanted to make this game is I watched 13 Reasons Why on Netflix, and I really did not like how they handled mental illness or recovering from it, or how the counselors were dealt with, or any of that. And so I was like, Harrison, when we make our next game, I want to make it with mental illness, and I want it to be about recovering in a healthy way.
Yeah, specifically, what was it about 13 Reasons Why that you didn't like how they dealt with the mental illness aspect?
There were so many things. The one thing I can think of off the top of my head was the counselor, at least in the TV show, the book's a little bit different.
Right.
The counselor almost actively ignored Hannah's cries for help.
Gotcha.
When she was suffering. And I don't like that. I mean, there are definitely some crappy counselors out there in the world, but I feel like media is constantly ushering folks away from getting help.
Gotcha.
And there can be some really great counselors out there, and if you need help, you need to reach out and get the help. There shouldn't be this fear of asking for help when it comes to mental issues.
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything?
Please do.
Why we made this game?
Yeah, sure. So the original question was just why we are approaching the subject matter, right?
Yeah, because it's not, like I said, it's almost like there's some people that will focus on making a game specifically in the sort of the queer genre. Other people might focus on making a game about mental health. I mean, we just saw the gigantic success of Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, which is all about mental health.
Right.
And then you kind of but you guys are taking almost two very big issues in society today and putting them in one game, which is very kind of noble, and it's definitely ambitious. So what was the reasoning for you anyway behind that?
I think I kind of, to parrot some of the things Morgan said, it's about normalization, right?
Okay.
A lot of the things I don't view them maybe as different as some people might, but I also had a personal motivation. I'm a queer, mentally ill person, and some of the game is informed by personal experience, but some of it is, informed by friends' experience. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I know personally a lot of queer people who deal with things like mental illness or struggling to find a voice online, which is also part of the game.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just really important to deal with issues like that in an accessible way.
Yeah.
And I think that, like you mentioned, Hellblade, games like that kind of package it in a form that's digestible in a way.
Absolutely.
And with our game, we kind of were like, we wanted to make a lighthearted game that's dealt with these issues in the way that humans do, which is a lot of times through humor and through just talking about it with friends or like a therapist. And like Morgan said, there's a lot of examples of negative stereotypes of like therapy in media, and so we wanted to be like, well, we want to have a therapist who is mostly just interested in helping you, and
like you're supposed to,
and
right?
and just have it be a positive experience for the most part.
Yeah.
And yeah.
The art style is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of a more cartoony take on something that is, could be considered to be dark subject matter in places. Was there a specific? Was it kind of like, was that part of that decision-making process of like trying to make it a little more lighthearted? Was to have more of a? It reminds me a little bit of the Saga comic. I don't know if you've read that, but yeah, especially with the horns, right? So it reminded me a little bit of that, a little bit. Was that kind of part and parcel of the idea of making it just a little bit more kind of upbeat?
Yeah, sort of. I also don't think, like, there are definitely shows that are more cartoony that deal with serious issues.
Right.
Like, even Steven Universe, there are a lot of really heavy emotional topics that come up in that, show.
Yeah.
This style was kind of more manageable, considering it's just the two of us.
Yeah. And you went for the visual novel thing too, right? Which
yeah, because there's just the two of us again.
Is that just like an easier way to try and handle that as opposed to having to do, like, I don't know, 3D modeling and all the rest of it?
Yeah, 3D assets take a lot of work and a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I do some 3D, but I don't rig or animate that much.
Gotcha.
And so this was just like a lot faster. We could make more content.
Because you had mentioned this wasn't your first game. You said when we make our next game, we want it to be this. So this is something you've done before.
This is our
fourth as a team. Fourth as a team.
Wow.
Fourth as a team. We've
That's
made
amazing.
a Ludum Dare, 2 student games,
Yeah.
another Ludum Dare,
This.
Train Jam was one. So technically speaking, this is our 5th game together.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you guys are, don't mind me asking, how old?
23.
23 and
24 in like a week.
wow.
Or 2 weeks, yeah.
5 games and already, that's incredible. That's amazing to me. I'm like
you.
36, so I feel like useless, right? Like I haven't done anything in my life.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I asked you a little bit about the horns because it kind of like it was a little weird to me to begin with that they had horns and there was no explanation. Everyone just had horns and we were all cool with that, and I'm cool with that. But you would explain to me there's a little bit something else going on there with the horns. Would you care to explain maybe to the wider audience of what the horns might represent?
Sure.
That's a common question that we get about this, so
Right.
Internet, get ready.
Get ready. You're going to get it answered.
All right, Internet. So first of all, the comparison to Saga, I'm flattered because I love that
You're
comic.
very welcome.
Shout out to Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples.
Legend. Yeah.
So the horns are from the outset, and I don't know how much I want to talk about it
You don't have to
explicitly.
spoil it. You could just give us like a
I won't spoil it.
skirt the edges.
Yeah. The horns are sort of supposed to represent something about each of the characters. You won't see the characters directly mention the horns in the first part of the game, but if you keep reading, you'll see there's something more than just like a metaphor, which is kind of how it's presented at first. But there's also some supernatural stuff that happens in the game that kind of gives you more insight into why that is.
Mystery.
We kind of reference Twin Peaks and we're inspired by Twin Peaks, where the supernatural is there and it's always kind of underlying,
Right.
but it's not directly referenced for quite some time.
It's almost surrealism in a way. It's kind of like, well, I guess it starts off, like you said, metaphor, and then builds itself into surrealism, and then somewhere ends up with supernatural, right? It's kind of what we're kind of looking at.
It's sort of a slow burn, about like sort of leading up to something more direct. but there's actually, even at its most direct, only one line in the game that directly mentions the horns.
Okay. All right.
So-
Someone's just like, why do we have horns?
But yeah.
I did notice there's player choice as well. You do get some options that pop up, and it's like
Yeah.
this or that or whatever. How much does that directly affect the rest of the story? Is it just kind of like a nice bit to kind of make the players feel like they have a little bit more control, or is there some genuine like outcomes that are very different depending on what you're selecting as you're going through?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of view the choices in two different ways.
Okay.
There's choices that are decisive, and then choices that are expressive. So you have in the demo there are choices that are mostly like, how do I want to play the character of Twig?
Okay.
And you can say slightly different things and get different responses. And then there's later in the game choices where you can decide to hang out with different characters.
Ah, okay.
And in sort of a what's it called in Mass Effect? The legacy missions, or what are they?
I know you.
We call them friendship quests, but
Yeah.
in Mass Effect, they're loyalty missions.
Loyalty
Yes,
missions, that's
thank
right.
you for that.
And the friendship quest is actually cribbing from a term used by the Night in the Woods developers, if you're
Oh,
familiar with that
lovely.
game.
Yeah, great game.
So you can choose to hang out with different characters, and that will result in different endings.
Okay.
But we explicitly wanted to make it so that there wasn't a quote-unquote bad end, because mostly because of the subject matter, where we didn't want the characters to we wanted the characters to have a positive experience at the camp regardless, but there are different outcomes of whether or not the characters you spend time with each other end up liking each other or remaining friends based
So
on the
it's
choices you
more
make.
sort of friendship / romantic based outcomes as opposed to the whole world dies or it doesn't. Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it is friendship. Yeah,
Cool.
outcomes of the friendship. We also wanted to make a visual novel that wasn't a dating sim necessarily.
Okay.
So I kind of jokingly refer to it sometimes as friendship sim.
Friendship sim.
Yeah.
I like it. So far it's on Android.
Yeah.
That's the big one. Now, what other platforms are we looking to try and reach with this game?
Sure. So we definitely are going to be releasing on PC, Mac, and Linux.
Beautiful.
We are shooting for that around end of September.
Awesome.
We've had a lot of feedback just today about iOS. Definitely going to be looking into doing an iOS port as well. I just need to get my hands on a MacBook.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one in the back somewhere. You can,
Oh, okay.
Maybe. What was the feedback around iOS? Was it just that most people have iPhones that are here, or?
I was just going to say, I don't know if we can port it in a day.
Well, you never know.
It is interesting. I feel like the consumer audience maybe thinks porting. It's like, oh yeah, just port it.
Takes a little bit of time.
It does, especially when there's hardware limitations and things like that. But
Gotcha.
but yeah, we've been just talking, and people really like that it's on phones. I've found.
Yeah.
Because
It actually works great. Control-wise, I think the biggest problem you get with mobile games usually is that a lot of people don't like complicated controls on mobile games because they just don't do them very well. You know.
You see that joypad overlay. And
Exactly.
Yeah,
no one
that's-
likes that. So with this idea of a visual novel, I found myself getting quite into it. I knew that I had to do a freaking interview, so I was like, okay, I should wrap this up at some point. But I was getting really into it, and I could actually picture myself sitting down, going through, and enjoying it. And
Yeah.
I think the visual novel medium is perfect for that. So
Yeah.
I would love to see it, obviously, on bigger releases. Would you look at doing it on something like a Switch if possible, or is that kind of just you're mostly sticking to Steam and mobile?
So I love the Switch as a platform, and I think I'd love to see games that we make kind of in the future on platforms like Switch or things like that. I think with this game we're gonna probably just do the PC release.
Okay.
I know a little bit about the behind the scenes process of getting a dev console.
It's pretty hard
on that.
right now for Switch anyway. Yeah.
It's easy if you know someone.
Oh,
at
well, yeah.
Nintendo.
There's that.
But and I don't. Nintendo. But Reggie himself. But yeah, I think definitely in the future I'd love to do more console work. This was my first game ever not on PC to start. It's going to be coming to PC, but yeah. So there's always unique challenges into developing for console. And for Android, there's things we had to consider. We want to do phone vibrate for the message notification. How do you do that?
That was a neat little twist as well.
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned to me a little bit before that there's kind of a I don't want to say a horror element, but like a ghostly element that comes in a little bit later on with the text messages and things like that. And I saw the thing that says, you have a new message. I was like, what the hell? I didn't even know I had a phone. So I, jumped in and I was reading the text messages. It was like a cute little thing. So it's not kind of like just a visual novel. There is definitely some other exploration elements that go into it as well.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about like console in terms of your wider audience, because your big sort of plan for the game was to try and normalize some of these things, right? And I thought, the bigger outreach that you get, kind of the better that's gonna end up ultimately. I would hope, anyway. Yeah. So is there anywhere that we can follow development of this? Because is it out now, or is it still demo phase, or what's the situation with it?
Yeah, so the game is out now. It's out on Android. You can get it on the Google Play Store for $2.99.
Not a bad price. Not a bad price.
Yeah, and you can follow us on Twitter at Pride Interactive without an E, so PRIDEINTERACTIV.
That's correct.
I can
interactive
spell.
without an E. You can figure it out.
I can spell.
I'll put it on the screen. It'll be fine.
I'll put it on the spot.
Yeah. That's great. I really enjoyed it, honestly. The short time that I spent with it, I hope that you bring it to iOS, because unfortunately I don't have an Android.
Yeah,
but yeah, I really dug it. And I think that the themes that you're trying to tackle here and just all of that is wonderful. I really dig it. Our channel's always been about like encompassing all types of content that's available, and a festival like Pixelpop is especially good at that type of thing, of bringing in just like some of the wildest games that you would never maybe get to see unless you were here. It's like some of those, especially those alternative controller games. They're quite something over there. So thank you for all the work that you're putting into that. It's great.
Definitely, and thank you, because I think that YouTubers, Twitchers
will work.
Twitch streamers, basically anyone that like curates content and thinks about games like alternative games or like games for like niche audiences. I think that's great, and thank you very much for doing
It's just
that.
a love fest over here.
Yeah,
it's loving it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for watching our coverage of Pixelpop 2018. This is Burn Ban, or the team behind Burn Ban, Morgan and Harrison. Go check it out if you have an Android phone, and if you have a different device, and it's coming pretty soon to you anyway, and you should check it out then. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.
Ain't no game